Hi, I'm Scott Brian Woods.
And I'm Jeff McClinchey, and we're the creators of Black Helm Saga.
This is the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Scott Brian Woods and Jeff McClinchey as they discuss their new comic book series, Black Helm Saga. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Born in the Ottawa Valley and raised in the wilds of Northern Ontario, Scott Brian Woods currently resides in London, Ontario. Scott is a working artist with over 20 years of comic book work under his belt. He writes, draws, and works as his life's passion, which was ignited when, at an early age, Scott's grandfather bought him an issue of Conan the Barbarian. Finding himself open to a world of imagination, he soon discovered Star Wars, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, and their like, and his future path was set. Scott's been exploring brave new worlds through his comics and art ever since. His work includes illustrating Equilibrium for Comic House, a 5-issue series featuring Captain Canuck, Daredevil, Freelance, and many more proud Canadian legacy characters spanning back to the 1940s. His other work includes a sci-fi series Daring the Sun, which follows astronaut Crash Daring in the distant future, who finds himself far from Earth, struggling to survive on a savage alien world. Scott self-publishes his sword and sorcery epic No Rask for the Wicked, inspired by an ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign played with his longtime friends. It chronicles the exploits of an unscrupulous rogue, a befuddled wizard, and a mysterious ghost. Along with his comic work, Scott has written, drawn, and published the children's book Anywhere Can Be Everywhere. Conceived during the pandemic and based on his daughters, the story follows two young girls who use their imagination to overcome a rainy day. Based in London, Ontario, Jeff McClinchey is a comic artist and writer, graphic designer, teacher, photographer, and illustrator. Jeff has been in the graphic design industry for nearly 30 years. The majority of that time has been working in full-service marketing agencies. At these agencies, he's been able to execute a range of projects, from strategic conceptualization to pre-press work, including a specialization in illustration. Since 2015, he's taught part-time at Fanshawe College, instructing a variety of courses in the graphic design program. Currently, he's developing new creator-owned Canadian comic projects that continue to explore visual world building, character depth, and story-driven design. Together with Scott, they've created the Black Helm Saga series. The story of Black Helm Saga goes like this. The first Ragnarok has transpired. The world has fallen, and before the cycle repeats itself, there'll be a moment of something new, of firsts. There'll be a time of struggle, a time where the evils that were to be wiped away cling to the underbelly of the land floating in an eerie mist that is still held aloft by the dying magic of the old gods. These monsters, new and old, will make their way to the last bastion of humanity. From out of this darkness, a champion rises, tasked with the protection of these last people, or at least the protection of a certain few. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Scott Brian Woods and Jeff McClinchey as they discuss their new comic book series, Black Helm Saga. So, Scott Brian Woods and Jeff McClinchey, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I appreciate your time. Before we get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read? And maybe I'll ask Scott to go first.
I would say the first comic book that I read most likely was a Spider-Man. No, probably Conan, and it would have been my brother's Conan comics. So it would have been in Savage Sword of Conan magazine size. Yeah, it's probably Conan.
How about you, Jeff? What was your first comic book?
For myself, to be honest, because I got comics at such an early age, I don't remember the exact first one. But what really stands out to me was every time going to the grocery store with my mom, she'd let me pick up a book. And for example, the George Perez and Jerry Conway Justice League Satellite era issues, I fondly just remember that as being just the books that made me go, oh my gosh, I need to always go to the grocery store with my mom because they were just so good.
Those are pretty amazing books to get started on, that's for sure. But I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today? And maybe I'll ask Scott to go first.
Honestly, it's probably still going back to older creators. I'm a big fan of Milton Caniff, Jack Kirby, John Buscema, who is Conan. He's the Conan artist. For today, I would say, or closer to today, like Darwin Cook is definitely an influence for me. Sadly, he's passed away now. His work is enduring and still inspires. Chris Samney currently is one of the best, I think. There's so many right now. It's really hard to put them, like Paul Pope. He's a huge influence on me, actually. That's one I should have said right away. There is so many right now that it's really hard to make a list.
Sure.
You have to make a list.
That's a lot, that's for sure. How about you, Jeff? Who or what inspires you to create today?
There's so much. When it comes to comics, one of my favorite things is I'm still a back issue diver. And so currently, I've been going back through Paul Galancey's work, trying to just fill out sections that I've been missing. Along with that, though, not just in comic books, a big influence for me, I would say, is movies. I love storytelling in general. In particular, people like Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, a lot of them, I like to see how they create their shots, how they do their editing and transitions, continuity, just all of that. It's really inspiring because I find comics and filmmaking are just so closely related. So then when it comes back to comic books, I find myself then, I guess, at the same time, like I already brought up Paul Gulacy, there's lots of older people that I quite like. I find currently, like Scott had mentioned, like Darwin Cook, there's really that post Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Millar influenced comics. I like seeing what Tom King is doing. Anyone that's doing things that sometimes you don't even need to read the words. You can just like flip through and
Mike Mignola.
Oh, Mike Mignola, of course.
That one should have been top.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He's huge.
Yeah. But yeah, that would probably be what keeps me going, keeps me fueled.
Well, lots of good inspiration there. So now I've got to ask you transition to say how those inspirations have helped you to create your new comic book series, Black Helm Saga. That's what we're talking about here today. Why don't you talk a little bit about that story? How would you describe it to someone? And maybe, Jeff, you could go first.
Yeah. So if I was describing this to someone that was just coming to it fresh, has no idea, I would say this is a series that is picking up on just age-old tales of mankind. For as long as people could communicate, we have told stories to try to explain the world, and that's where mythology comes from. So in particular, with this book, we're headed into the realm of Norse mythology. And with that, we find ourselves with, well, I don't want to give away too much. We find ourselves with a mysterious Viking that has positioned himself to be the protector of the world during Ragnarok, or at least during those last throes of Ragnarok where the world is kind of imploding in on itself. The void, the nothingness is getting closer. There's less of humanity. And those little bastions are left to all the terrors that are left in the world. And he is the one person standing between them and that. Especially as with Ragnarok, it is a cycle process that something will be coming. But in the meantime, how do you protect those that need protecting?
Right. You just mentioned a couple terms there, Ragnarok, and people instantly probably think of the Marvel movies with Thor, but many people don't realize that that's based on Norse mythology. It's really been something that's ingrained in the culture. So, Scott, maybe I should ask you what inspired you to create the story and the look of the characters?
It's going to go back to just my love of sword and sorcery fantasy books like Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that. I've always loved Norse mythology. It's one of the oldest stories that we have. So much of our culture picks from it. Like, Woden's Day, Wednesday is basically Odin's Day. It used to be Woden. Small things like that. Thor's Day, Thursday, like just little things that we take for granted. Vikings is a group of people going on a mission. That's what Vikings is.
Yeah.
Like, that's the term, but we generalize it. But like the Norsemen, they have influenced us a lot. So with the comic and the character design, there's influence from like Fire and Ice cartoon, Conan again, even like Batman to a degree, like something about the blackness of his helmet and the cowl, like almost like his cowl. just big, strong superhero comic. Like it's kind of an idea of it's a superhero set in Norse mythology times. Like Ragnarok has happened. This is what happens after Ragnarok. It's a pocket of time. We don't know what happened. Everything's supposed to restart. So this is sort of a little window into we can do whatever we want. We can make up any characters or storylines. And yeah, there's nothing saying that it's wrong. It's just freedom. So
I was just going to add in there just to remind Scott, Hercules.
oh, yes. Yeah. Hercules, the mighty Hercules.
Hey, you're talking the animated show? Is that what
the
you're talking
animated
about?
show? That was
Gee, Herc. That one?
yeah, for sure. That's another influence. That and like so Saturday morning cartoons. So the Mighty Hercules is a big influence on me. That was the one, you wake up at 6:30 in the morning. That's the cartoon that you would watch, and that started your day. Either it was on the weekday before you're getting on the bus, or it was on Saturdays. The color scheme of that character influenced like the animated Superman that you see, and vice versa. So Hercules was influenced by the Superman color schemes. And then later on, it gets picked up and is influencing Bruce Timm.
Yeah.
Even mentions that.
That's what I thought of
when
when you said Batman. That's one of the things that I think about too, is the Batman animated series. Yeah. Taking basically stories that everyone gets and putting them into these episodic bites that are easy to keep up with.
Yeah, back to that Saturday morning cartoon feel, which, you'd watch same thing like Thundar or He-Man. Yeah. Those are influences in it as well. You get an episode like, I don't know if every issue will be like this. It's almost like Hercules would be on, he comes down, he's defending that one city. He's fighting for Kaladin. I think that's the name of it. So that's the monster of the week. That's what he took care of. I think there's some idea of that. Like that might have been one of the starting points for the idea of this book. I just wanted to have a character where he comes in, there's an area that he has to take care of, and then he's gone. We can either play around with like, will there be a secret identity? Who knows? Like there's things that we're keeping close.
And yeah, the episodic nature is really nice. And it's one of the things, like I love the soap opera nature of comics. Like I'd be lying if I didn't say one of the, like growing up with the X-Men. Like that was one big soap opera. But at the exact same time as really enjoying that, going back to Mike Mignola, you can pick up basically almost any one of his miniseries. And you don't necessarily have to have ever read any other Hellboy. You can pretty much jump into whether it's Hellboy in Love or BPRD or whatever it is. And it's a nice, starting point. Mm-hmm. And it's capturing that, which is that same feel as, popping on the Saturday morning cartoons, or like I said earlier, going to the grocery store with your mom and picking up something off the newsstands. It's, trying to deliver comics in that way.
Great. Well, they usually say that you should create a project for yourself. As any artist or creator, always create for yourself. But with that in mind, who is the target audience? Because you mentioned a lot of different references and inspirations here, but who ultimately do you think will get the benefit out of reading this book?
My first stab is right off the bat, you'll notice that like earlier, when I'm talking about influential comic books for me, I'm talking about Justice League, I'm talking about X-Men. So this is throwing zero shade at superhero books. Like I've got a bag beside me I just purchased. But there is a certain amount of superhero fatigue. And to be honest, if you are working within the independent sphere, you have to be able to compete. And it's very hard to compete against Marvel and DC that have recognition that kind of incomparable in the industry. So with that, it doesn't mean that you can't do books like those. It just means you have to always make sure that you're bringing something different to the audience. Give them a reason why they should pick up, for example, something like Black Helm, as opposed to Wolverine or Thor or Deadpool or whatever that might be. So with this, it's obviously meant to appeal to those that like your swords and sorcery, all of those types of books, people that like, like the classic mythology of Thor, Conan, all of that. But then at the same time, I think we're doing it in such a way, Scott had mentioned, that there's a certain element to it that is superhero-ish, that there is an identity. You don't know who he is. He is a savior. It's just the location has changed from what people will typically see as, the modern city.
I would say, first and foremost, when I was working on other projects, I would draw this guy on the side and it would just keep changing or just doodling and just refining and refining and refining. It's just, I drew the helmet first and I drew the beard after that. And then it just kept elaborating. I'm like, well, is he going to have an axe? Is he going to have a sword? No, we're going to go with the giant hammer. I think I was just drawing it for myself. So I think initially, like you said, you work on that project for yourself. Initially, it was my way of drawing He-Man or Conan. Like, you don't want to draw exactly what they look like, right? So the look has to be different. So I developed my own look. He's going to be that super heroic feel. So I guess, yeah, like Jeff said, the target audience is basically with people who like the same stuff we like.
Yeah, that's a lot of it.
Whether or not that's 30 to 60-year-olds, I think that might be our target. But I've had some people younger than that seem pretty excited about it, and that's refreshing because you never know. When you're making these things, you're just doing it for yourself, and it's sort of like you put it out there and then you just hope that it's received well. And so far, what we're getting feedback online and in a couple shows that we've done this year leading up with, we had an 8-page ash can preview, and the response is pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's funny, even talking about making the book for ourselves. I was mentioning movies earlier. If you look at my little DVD shelf at home, you're going to instantly notice that it's made up of a lot of movies like Conan the Barbarian, Fire and Ice, Beastmaster, Deathstalker 2, Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and of course, Peter Jackson's. Just whenever there's fantasy, I just find I want to eat it up because it's a genre. There's not as much, really.
You're scrambling for it. I'll give Tubi a shout out.
Oh, yeah, Tubi.
Tubi streaming service. They seem to have all the old cult classic stuffs on there. So I'll put that on, and any of those movies that Jeff just mentioned is playing in the background usually when I'm working, or cartoons or something of that genre to get me in the headspace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of like the sword and sorcery, I guess. Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears completely now and talk about how you made the book, the creative process. So maybe, Scott, you could go first. Tell me about how you put this thing together and how you and Jeff collaborated to pull it off.
As I said before, I was just drawing it out, sketching, doing a lot of sketches, and then I was tabling at Last Fan Expo. I had my other comics there, and Jeff was kind enough to sit at my table with me and help me out for the weekend. And he has done that many times. He's a big comic guy. He's an artist. He's a writer. And on the drive back, I said, why don't you do something? Like, why aren't you doing a book? And I said, will you do this with me? So I laid out what I had in my head, and we talked about it. 2-hour drive from Toronto to London, where we live. And that was the beginning of it. That really started us talking about it. I had my idea of where it would start and that sort of thing. And I had some characters that I had been sketching up and like a loose idea of names and stuff and the reason for being and all that sort of things. So I just went on a tangent talking about all that. He absorbed it. And then he came back, and over time, he wrote the script for the first issue, and I think he only went through one revision, right? And that was only very minor stuff. Basically, what the book is the first interpretation of just sort of like just an introduction to the world. Like, it's not necessarily an origin. It's not really an origin at all. It's just sort of like,
not at all.
You're just sort of plunked into this world exists, this happens, and it's just an ongoing thing. And through time, we'll develop the beginnings and all that sort of stuff. That was it. And I compiled up all my drawings and notes and anything that I thought was relevant and sent it off to Jeff, and then he regurgitated it into a cohesive story.
Well, that sounds good. Did you take notes along the car ride, or is it just something you remembered in your head going, yeah, we should do that, and yeah, we should do this?
Yeah, like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think for myself, like one of the big things was Scott's initial sketches. Now, there was more than one, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the process is it's given me a little bit of that Eastman and Liard feel, if you know their story. Just like there's the first Ninja Turtle, and then they just kind of like worked from that drawing. And that first issue, hearing all of Scott's thoughts about, like I said, at that point, it was really just a drawing, and it was like a set of ideas that just kind of come to Scott freeform. and collecting those. And then even particular, he had one print that had a beast on it. And that was probably like, okay, I'm going to work around that. And when it came to fleshing out that first story, I just thought to myself, you want to keep it simple. You want to have something that people aren't going to feel overly weighted by or bombarded with too much exposition. This is really, let's establish some characters, establish some relationships. And if you can get that tone and feel combined with an emotional bond, hopefully that will make them go, oh, I enjoyed that. And I kind of want another story with these guys. So, yeah.
That's great. Great sort of insight. But I guess should ask the question now that we were talking about Black Helm Saga. What's next? Like, I'm sure you have other projects on the go. Maybe, Scott, you could outline what you have in your spare time beyond Black Helm Saga that you can talk about.
I don't have spare time. It's just drawing all the time from one project to the next. I am still working on my creator-owned books, Daring the Sun. It's a sci-fi fantasy book, like Flash Gordon meets Memento, and No Rask for the Wicked, which is based on a D&D game that Jeff and I both had played in, based on my character and another friend's character. So I got those two that I'm still working on. I have issues 1 to 3 of each completed right now, working on the 4th issue sort of at the same time. I go from one to the other, from page to page sometimes. So those are both half done, I would say. And then after that, I have Equilibrium from Comic House is in the works. So all the issues are drawn right now. The 5th issue needs to be drawn, and they'll be soliciting them on their schedule. So because of Diamond distribution and everything has all changed the way things get done, things have been held back. So we're just just sort of waiting for that sort of thing to happen. But that's on the go. And I'm also working on another project with Dwayne Murray, who did Better Place for IDW and Who Are the Power Pals recently by Dark Horse. He and I are working on a project. More details to come from that, but it will be hopefully in December of 2026 is when that comes out. And that'll be a full graphic novel. Other than that, the last thing, I have recently just been approached by the, I don't know if you've heard about them, but speaking of distribution, the Power Pulp Comics group. They are an independent coalition group of indie comic artists who started their own way of distributing comics. So it's powerpulpcomics.com. They approached me and asked me if I wanted to become part of the group. I have. It's sort of a distribution hub. It's in the States, so it's great for comic shops who want to find something new and different. There's lots of great books on there. So yeah, that's what I got on the go.
Very good. How about you, Jeff? What do you have on the go?
I have. There's one book. I got one more page to draw for the first issue. That book is called Probed and Loaded. I'm doing it with Scott Wozczyk. Scott has done a lot of books. His Zero Box Time Machine and some others with Studio Comics. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. But nevertheless, yeah, that's kind of the prime books that I've got forward. But I am going to be bringing out for 2026 a book of short stories. I'm going to take 5 of my concepts and I'm going to write them out as 12-page short stories. And from there, we'll see, how they resonate. And then hopefully I'll continue on with at least one of them and just kind of see what people like. I like them all, but you never know what other people are going to dig.
Cool. Well, it sounds like you both have a lot on the go. So I'm wondering where you recommend that people go online to find out more about your current and your future work. And I'll ask Scott to go first.
For me, it would be my website, scottbrianwoods.com. That's where all my books are. Other than that, I'm only really on Instagram at the moment. My online handle is @ScottBrianWoods.
And how about you, Jeff? Where can people find you online?
Probably the main place to find me is through Instagram. At Clinch 1975. Obviously, with Black Helm Saga, you'll find that on Scott's website, where we've been doing some pre-orders and some other fun merchy things with it too.
Thanks to Scott and Jeff for the chat. You can discover more about Scott Brian Woods online at his website, scottbrianwoods.com, and on Instagram at scottbrianwoods. You can discover more about Jeff McClinchey on Instagram at instagram.com/clinch1975. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations and discover more about creators on making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're welcome to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.